Thank you all for being here tonight. Now, you might be wondering, why is a shy girl like me stood up in front of a big room full of people like this? Well, I think when your message is bigger than the fear, it makes it easier to actually do the thing that scares you. I'm going to tell you a bit about my story and the story behind why I wrote The Mouse That Roars. When I was young, when I was a child, as my mum over there would testify, I was incredibly shy. And I mean incredibly shy. The door would go, the phone would ring, and I was more likely to hide behind her and my dad rather than actually, answer it. I was shy. I was an introvert. I struggled to make friends. I remember I tried to do tap dancing once, and the teacher shouted at me, and I ran away, and I never actually came back again. I did brownies, I did guides, and I went to a new secondary school when I was 12. And that sort of age is a really difficult time, isn't it? You're trying to find yourself, you're going through hormonal things. And for me, it didn't really help that I have some props. I had glasses that were even worse than this. I was incredibly tall for my age. I was overweight. I stood out for all the wrong reasons. And I was bullied at school. And I'm sure if I asked for a show of hands around here, who else went through something similar at some stage in their life? Yeah? Anyone else? I've seen quite a few nods and quite a few people. I had some statistics earlier this week that 43% of children are bullied. And that's really scary, isn't it? To think so many people go through that. But I stood out for the wrong reasons, and I had that choice whether to retaliate or to withdraw even more. And I'm not going to tell you which one I took. You can find out in the book. But I suppose when you're shy, and it's just like, how do you fit in with everybody else? What do you do? What do you do differently? And I think in my 20s, I started that personal development journey, although I didn't realise that at the time. I started studying, getting books on things like life coaching, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, things like, started doing personal profiling, sort of personality testing, emotional intelligence, and I suddenly realised that everybody was different. We're all different. Who would know that we are all different? There's 45 people in this room, and everybody's different. You've all got your own strengths, you've all got your own weaknesses, and that's absolutely okay. And I was trying to be somebody I wasn't, but I didn't have to do that. So I learned to play to my strengths, and I learned to either work on my weaknesses or just let them go. And now in business, I'm great. It's great for me because I can rely on people who fill in the gaps where I actually don't want to do things, and do the things that I love to do. So, that was my late 20s. And one of the turning points was Peter and I got married in, when was it, October 2005? And I was in a job that was okay at the time. It was fine, I was ticking along. And then one day my boss said to me, "Karen, I wish you would speak out more." And I went, okay, shall I change? Shall I do something different? And I thought, actually, I'm me. And I made the decision to do something different. So I found myself a life coach. I found a life coach on eBay, of all places. Worked with her for 3 months. I know it's a bit random, but hey, you do the Google search and you see what comes up. And I worked with her for 3 months. I found a job that I actually wanted to do, and I decided to train as a coach myself. So yeah, a really incredible journey. And I know that I'm a much more confident person and a completely different person to the person I was back then. So I trained as a coach. I'm a completer finisher. That's one of my strengths. If I want to do something, I see it through to conclusion. And for people who have mentored me in the room, that if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And really, that's what I did. So November 2006, I had a bright, shiny website, bright, shiny business cards, and I qualified as a coach. So you can imagine me now, can't you? I'm stood on my doorstep going, "Hey, I'm a coach." And guess what? Nobody heard me. I didn't realise at the time, but there's a huge difference between being a coach and being a business owner. And that is something that a lot of coaches don't realise. You think, hey, I'm a brilliant coach, people should employ me, I'm really good at what I do. But actually making it in terms of running a business is a completely different story. Now, I did have some successes. Some were I've always called them lucky breaks, but actually I think they were strategic successes. People found me through my website. I had a really good community, a network of people that I started building relationships with. And some of you who I've known, for a long time, probably since around about that time. So, it's those connections that bring everyone, bring it all together. And also the support network, so the coaches, the mentors I worked with that have really helped me every step of the way. So, in 2009, I kind of put me and the business on the map because I wrote my first book. Well, actually, it was 2011 by the time I actually got it written, but 2009 was that day, that moment I decided to actually start writing. Now, I never set out to write a book. It's something that happened a little bit by accident. I was doing my NLP Masters at the time, and we had to do a modelling project, so we had to find somebody who did what we wanted to do really well. So I modelled the mindset behind a successful coaching business. So I wanted to learn what is the difference that makes a difference between someone who is successful in terms of being a coach, but was also good at the business side of things as well. And I had the pleasure of spending time with 11 successful coaches, and I found commonalities between some of the things that people were telling me. And this is the first book. So The Secrets of Successful Coaches came out in March 2011. Some of you I know were at the book launch. And that's the thing that put me in the business on the map. The fact I'd written a book, the fact that I'd stood out from everybody else. Because at the time there weren't many people doing it. And things have changed a little bit since then. And it was a thing that just, made a really huge difference to me and also my business. But I did say never again. So I do wonder why we're here today at my fourth book launch. But hey, But the thing that was one of the turning points for me was in 2012, I did a project called A Year to Live. And that's really where the inspiration for The Mouse That Roars came from. I was introduced to a book by Stephen Levine called A Year to Live. He'd written this many years prior. And his book was, he worked with terminally ill cancer patients. And then one day he thought, why wait until you're in your final few months, final few years to actually live your best life? So he and his wife, Andrea, they did a project called A Year to Live. So they spent a year of their life working on this. And the book's all about mindset, mindfulness, forgiveness, gratitude. And throughout my Year to Live in 2012, I embraced a lot of the principles in the book. But the main question I asked myself is, if I had a year to live, what would I do? So whenever I had to make a decision, I asked myself that question. So in the March, I decided to go skiing for the first time. Now, I say the first time, I did do, I think, a 2-hour lesson in Canada in '97, which was a total disaster. And every year, my husband goes skiing, and, I like my time on my own. But I thought, let's try it. What's the worst that can happen? And I tried it, and actually I quite like it. And somehow, I won a ski race last year in our ski club. No idea how. I'm still not very good, but I'm getting there. I've been 5 years now, and I'm so glad I did it because I found something I love with a group of people who are absolutely amazing to be with as well. So what else did I do during that year? I was planning to do a conference, the StarBiz conference in November 2012, and I wanted to do something really different. And I decided to do a firewalk. So I thought, okay, so who do I know who can do a firewalk? And when I talk firewalk, for those of you who don't know, it's walking on burning hot coals. And I'd done it once before with Wendy and Roberta. And I thought, well, why not? And James said, yeah, of course we can. No problem at all. But why don't you train to become a firewalk instructor? And I went, yeah, no, I don't think so. Because I knew that not only would I be doing over 100 firewalks on the Sunday night, I'd also be doing things like, breaking an arrow with my neck, breaking a board with my bare hand, breaking a block with my bare hand, glass walking, and all sorts of other things you do when you become a firewalk instructor. May 2012, I was in Peterborough for 4 days, learning to become a firewalk instructor, and James and I did the training together. And that was fine until we set the fire alarms off, but hey, that's a different story. So the other thing I did during that year is a tandem parachute jump. So I'm really, really petrified of heights. And there was 5 of us. I got 3 of my clients who, unfortunately, none of them are here. And the night before, Peter decided to do it as well. So he hadn't had those months of, oh my God, what am I doing? 15,000 feet. I'm going to jump out of a plane, attached to somebody. What's going to happen? How am I going to do it? And on the day, I'm looking down and going, ah! And that's something I will never do again. Loved it, but I'll never do it again. And I also signed up to do a charity track, which is all Tracy's fault. I signed up to do a charity track to Machu Picchu, which we did in 2013. And that was an amazing experience, but I'll tell you about that in a second. I think with life, before I go on to that, I also published my second book. And that was launched in the conference that year. So I didn't do a full, official launch like this, but it was launched in the conference. When you do something like A Year to Live or anything, you realise your own mortality. And it was during that year that my dad said to me, I might not have a year to live. And he had been diagnosed with cancer for the second time. He had it 10 years earlier, got through it, but this time it was esophageal cancer. He went through 3 gruelling rounds of chemotherapy. He had an operation where he had a 50-50 chance of actually surviving, and he got through it. But in the April 2013, he became ill again, even though he'd got the all clear, and he passed away 23rd of May 2013. So it makes you realise how important life is, that if you've got real big dreams and real big things that you want to achieve, not to put them off. He was 69, that's no age. And I think it's just really important to live your best life. And, one of the reasons I'm here today is because of him. Because he inspired me beyond the grave to write the book and to share my story with you all. And I think that's just a really important message to get across. And yeah, it was a tough year. And it was that year that I did my trek to Machu Picchu. Yes, it's a bit large. Did it, managed it. I will say that 3 days in, I landed up in hospital over in Peru. That wasn't the greatest experience, but I still did the trek. But it did take my body quite a long time to recover from the altitude, and also the fact that I hadn't really allowed myself time to grieve, to actually look after myself. But the Mouse That Roars, it was kind of moving on. It's taken a long time to write this blooming book. It's been so many states of undress. It's been so many, pulled it apart and put it back together again. I took 6 months out to write my 3rd book, Your Book is a Hook, which I launched, when was that, last year, last February, last March, I think it was. This one was the easiest book I've ever written. What happened in 2014 is a lot of people said to me, Karen, you've written a couple of books, how did you do it? And I went, well, it's easy. And then they said, no, it's not. And I tell my clients all the time that the thing that you find easy is the thing that you need to do. And I wrote this book, I modelled the process I use when I write a book, and this book came out last year. So finally, we're here, The Mouse That Roars. And I have to thank Esther, really, for helping me with this. The title came to us on a train trip to Queen's Club Tennis. Was it 2 years ago? I think it was, almost 2 years ago. And it's something I don't think I could have done without her help. And there's much more to the story, but there's a whole book full of the story. And it is my story. And my story behind this is to give you the courage to do what you want to do, get the support you need to actually achieve what you want. That life's too short, as we were seeing all the time, life's too short to actually do those things or not do the things that you really want to do. And that's really why I wrote the book, to encourage other people. And some people have said to me, what's happened to the mouse? I think, Louise, you asked me that once, what's happened to the mouse? Well, the mouse is still here. And I have to make a decision, do I hide and squeak or do I stand out? And I'm lucky I've got all the tools and techniques that I need. So when I really want to, I can roar. Thank you.